Good morning. Good morning. How the devil are you doing this fine day? Just bear with me for 1 second because for reasons I don't fully understand, Instagram failed to go live with us. And as they are a big part of our audience, I'm just trying to sort that out now. That should just about do it. Good morning, everyone. How are we? I know Gary Muirhead is here. And thank you very much indeed, Gary, for the question of the day today, which is an absolute belter, I have to say. I should be working on that in just a moment. No, doesn't look like. Instagram has just finally caught us up. Fantastic stuff. And at the same time, Mr. Mark Whiting. Mark Whiting has just joined us. Morning, Mark. And Chris Ford is here as well. Good morning, gentlemen. How the devil are we all doing? Another fine and splendid day out there. Might even do a bit of writing in the garden this afternoon, which might be quite nice. Wear a hat because of my bald noggin. But yeah, loads of stuff to get through today. Just a very quick heads up. One of the key reasons that I wanted to go to Italy, aside from the food and the drink and the people and the place and the architecture and everything, but apart from all of that, was you will all be familiar with the name Gilles Ronnet, the Caterpillar demolition specialist. Well, Gilles is easing himself into retirement as of about September this year. Gilles is going to ease off in a very stylish French way off into the sunset. And I took the opportunity, as the EDA event was his last, I wouldn't say it's his last official event, that would be overstretching the point, but it was certainly his last big event. So I went along and I interviewed him. We'll be bringing you that interview tomorrow. So if you enjoyed Gilles' company, and I certainly have over the years, then you may want to stick around for that. Let me just sort something out here. There we are. I've got a box of Is that what it was? Yeah, I've got a box of cardboard boxes by my side, and it's kind of obscuring the screen a little bit. I think my angle's a bit weird. Is that better? Yeah, that's probably a better view. Good morning, everyone. Ken Hatcher has just joined us as well. And Ken, unusually for Ken, has got nothing but sunshine. I think we've got all the same. Isn't it the hottest day of the year so far in the UK? May well be. So if you are out and about, people, stay hydrated. Put some lotion on in your parts and your places. I don't know if it's still visible, but as you can see, I got a bit of sunshine while I was over in Italy. Thoroughly enjoyed every moment of it. Didn't get burnt, thankfully. As I say, loads to get through today, including our first look at that EDA tour. We're going off to see a scrap company that specialises in turning some parts of the scrap that they find on demolition sites into fine art and furnishings. We've got that for you a bit later in the show. So let's crack on, shall we? Without further ado, I'm going to roll the intro, post the question of the day, and get this show on the road. And if anybody has got any issues with the sound, let me know. We've rerouted it. It should all be hunky-dory now. I know Jim was struggling a bit yesterday. I didn't have any problems at this end, but I know he was. So we've rerouted the entire thing. Should be okay now. But if anybody's experiencing audio problems or visual problems or problems of any kind, we're here to help. Let us know. Intro. I'm going to discuss this with Ken. He says, my hay fever is back, and he's done lots of angry faces. Ken, I feel your pain. I really do. Let me think, when was it? Yesterday, because my other half was heading back from Greece, I thought I'd better make the garden look a bit spick and span so she can carry on topping up her tan. So I went out and cut the grass. We've got a bush near the end of our garden. Stands about, I don't know, 10 foot tall, quite wide as well. I was cutting the grass around it, and I disturbed what I can only describe as a tsunami of pollen. Just found myself engulfed in pollen, and literally, as I thought that was a mistake, the sneezing began, and it was a good couple of hours of that. So, yes, go take. Is it antihistamines? Is that the stuff you take? I don't find it ever works, but if you're that way inclined, go give that a try. It is Wednesday, the 18th of June. Welcome to the Breakfast Show. I am your host, Mark Anthony, the Walrus of Demolition, the Lord High Chancellor of live streaming. And in today's show, we've got John Deere's latest loaders. We've got 100 XCMG autonomous trucks going to work in Mongolia. Kemroc, who I hung out with quite a bit while I was over in Italy, they're grinding out success. And in as I say, in the first of our videos from the EDA study tour of Italy, we're going off to a Milanese. You know, like Polo Milanese, but just from Milan. A company that turns scrap into fine art and furnishings. Plus, in my morning monologue today, will machine cabs become optional once more? That's going to be our discussion point for today. There is no mystery machine because, well, you know the score. So before we go any further, let me just quickly remind you of our question of the day. Yeah, our question of the day today comes once again from our resident quizmaster, Mr. Gary Muirhead. And his question is this: if you could live in any movie, which movie would you choose? Now, I don't know when he sent this, but I picked that up first thing this morning, and I immediately, literally, I've got two great ideas for that. The first was The Untouchables, Sean Connery, Kevin Costner, Andy Garcia, Robert De Niro, and all of those folks. Because who wouldn't want to be dressed by Giorgio Armani as a 1930s Chicago gangster? So that was my first thought. But then the one I'm going to go with, because I gave it a little bit more thought, The Life of Pi remains to this day the most beautiful film I've ever seen. I don't want to share a boat with a tiger, but everything about that world just looked beautiful, gorgeous, saturated colours and everything else. So I'm going for The Life of Pi. But what about you? If you could live in any movie, which one are you going for? Jim Turner has just arrived. Good morning, Jim. How are you doing, my friend? I assume you also have the sunshine. I think it's pretty much universal. Let us know in the chat what movie you would like to live in. I'm going to go over to Instagram, say good morning to Garvin, who's just joined us as well. Loads of other people over there as well. I'll get to those at some point. But let's crack on because I'm going to show you some brand new loaders from John Deere immediately after this. I do find it doubly annoying, the fact that we can't get John Deere equipment here. I mean, obviously, it's a famous brand and very popular in America, but the other thing as well, they seem to be constantly coming up with new machines. I'd have so much fun with all of that if they were actually over here. Anyway, that's an aside from me, that's personal. Here is their latest P-tier loaders. Now, hold the front page because we have a visitor from the Isle of Rhodes. The Isle of Rhodes. It's Mr. Ed Butler, who I am assuming is on his hollybobs at the moment. And he says, good morning all from sunny Rhodes. Fantastic stuff. Good morning to you, Ed. And if I knew how to say good morning in Greek, I would do it. I don't, so I won't. But have a fantastic time. Take care of yourself and your family. John Deere on the subject of Ken Hatcher says, oh, John is a big competition for cat in the USA, he says. Going back to which movie would you like to live in? Chris Ford, you're kind of showing that you and I are of a very similar age. Question of the day, Emmanuel, the scenery was very nice. Ah, yes, Sylvia Christel. Sylvia Christel. Who remembers Sylvia Christel? Had quite a thing for Sylvia Christel for quite some time. Mike Wolf says, John Deere machines can be bought in Europe through Wirtgen dealers, though only some models like the graders used in roadworks are available. Yeah, unfortunately, Mike, thank you very much indeed for pointing that out. I mean, obviously, that's why they put in an appearance at Baumer and Intermount, places like that. The annoying thing about that is all of the gear that we would really like to get our hands on, the excavators and the skid steers, and those aren't available, as far as I know. Chris Ford says, Sylvia Christel was not bad either. No, she was not. Seemed to have an allergy to clothing. Do you remember that? Emmanuel. Oh, here's some arty-farty. Oh, look, her clothes are falling off again. Bizarre. Yeah, misspent youth. I want to talk about autonomous machines, not once but twice today, and I shall do so, starting in just a moment.
If you are enjoying this episode, please consider supporting the show. You can leave us a tip at buymeacoffee.com/demolition news.
Now, my morning monologue today is very much related to all things autonomous. I'll worry about that when we get there. But you know, when we've been talking in the past about mines in places like Australia where they've gone autonomous, and they've got maybe a dozen autonomous trucks, which is, it's a huge investment, possibly tens of millions of dollars investment. 12 seems a lot, but 100? Yeah, 100. Have a look.
May 15th, 2025. XCMG 100 unit ZNK95 unmanned electric mining trucks were successfully delivered to Wanning, Yemen open pit mine, and put into operation. XCMG's cluster of 100 unit unmanned electric mining trucks. These which can achieve continuous 3-shift operation under -40 degrees Celsius using a pure electric drive system. The efficiency of fully automatic battery swapping within 6 minutes reaches 1.2 times that of manned driving. With overall technology leading in the industry. The Unmanned Electric Mining Truck Project is the industry's first intelligent battery swapping unmanned mining truck cluster equipment and system, integrating core technologies such as unmanned driving, 5G communication, intelligent battery swapping, intelligent safety control, etc. Using PV green electricity to achieve zero carbon operation in the transportation process. These 100-unit trucks can replace more than 15,000 tons of diesel annually, is reducing carbon dioxide emissions by 48,000 tons.
Ken Hatcher mentioned sneezing and hay fever. Mine has just started. I'm going to go over to the chat because this really did roll back the years. We're off Sylvia Christel. Gary Muirhead answering his own question. What movie would you like to live in? He says, Escape to Victory. Can you imagine playing alongside Pele? Personally, I'd have been more enamored with playing alongside Bobby Moore, who was also in the movie. But do you remember, because of the timing, I don't actually remember exactly what the year that came out. But at the time of that movie, the time the movie was filmed, Ipswich were, the stars of the English First Division. As a result of which, as a result of which, numerous Ipswich players were in the film, including John Walk and Russell Osborne. But also, if you look very, very carefully at Escape to Victory, obviously Michael Caine is in the film, excuse me. Michael Caine is in the movie, probably the star of the show. Much of the football wasn't actually played by Michael Caine. It was played by Kevin Beattie of Ipswich. Yes, good knowledge. Escape to Victory. And I have to say, as much as I like Sylvester Stallone, terrible goalkeeper. Even as a pretend goalkeeper, terrible goalkeeper. Anyway, we're going to see, we're back to the grind, literally, in a moment after this.
Since the finance bill came into effect in April, the construction industry has seen a surge of fuel thefts. The rising cost of living has placed an additional risk of theft by employees and contractors, as well as opportunistic thieves. By using diesel dye and placing warnings of its use, you are sending a clear message that this is your fuel.
Most of the companies I hung out with while I was in Italy, not surprisingly, were Italian. But I was hanging out also with a German company called Kemroc. I'm going to film from them right now.
I'm Rick Hune. I'm an operator on a Link Belt 300 with a Kemroc 110 trencher unit. Right now we're on a project where we're going to do all the sewer, water, and electrical. I'm trenching for the sewer sanitation line. We're down about 13.5 feet with 7 feet of rock. If I was running a hammer, I would have to have a track-hoe operator in a truck and hammer the rock out, of course. By doing so, that makes your pit a lot wider for the trench. Plus, you need a ball pit to get rid of it. By running the trencher, I'm able to do that myself with not any other equipment. If you're using a hammer or a trencher without GPS, you've got to have a track hoe, you've got to have GPS with it in order to get your trench started. With this unit here, it's got GPS on it. Basically, I don't need anybody on the job site with me. I set up and can make all the trench cuts for the guys to come in behind me and lay the pipe at a later date. So GPS is a great thing. Well, as you can see behind me, this is all the rock spoils that it's actually ground up. We can use that for fill, run it right back in. Whereas if you had hammered rock, you'd have to dig a borrow pit, get rid of it. So it's done excellent. Oh, I would say so, yeah. Like I said, you're eliminating a truck, track hoe, 2 operators outside of the trencher. Productivity-wise, I'm getting right at 4 cubic yards an hour, which is pretty good. That's running right alongside what a hammer would do. Unit cuts really good. Easy to use. It's a little bit of a learning curve, of course. When we first got the attachment, they sent out a gentleman that actually showed us how to run it, which was great. Kind of gives you the basis on it. And from that point, you just pick it up and go. You know, it's really easy. I'm very satisfied. CMC's done an excellent job for us. Kemroc also. If anything comes up or if I have any questions at all, I can call them. They're right on top of it. They get with Kemroc. Normally they can give me an answer back within that day and let me know what we're going to do, how we're going to do it, and when we're going to do it. So very pleased with service, 100%. Because they've been there and this unit works. This is a 110 and excellent unit, works good. We've also got a 100 and a 160, which all do good work.
Rick, on behalf of CMC and Kemroc, we appreciate your business. Look forward to doing more business with you in the future with Kemroc and with CMC.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Kenny. Appreciate it.
There you are, Kemroc. Good morning to my colleague from the EDA study tour who was with Kemroc, Arsene. Now, I need to go back to Mr. Wolf. See, I've known Mike Wolf for about 1,000 years now, and before he was on Global Highways, he was on Mining Magazine. So, hence the depth of knowledge on autonomous mining equipment. I first visited LKAB's underground mine in Kiruna, Sweden, in 1996. The firm was introducing its first fleet of autonomous mining trucks. From then Tamrock, now Sandvik. I was also at the CAT facility in Arizona in 1996, just before Mine Expo, when the firm unveiled its first autonomous 777 trucks. That was 29 years ago. And Mike Wolf has not aged a day. The technology has come a long way since then. Mike, haven't we all? Have we? Still largely doing the same job, aren't we? When did career progression grind to a halt? I know when mine stopped. Mick Norton has just joined us. Morning, Mick. Haven't seen you for a while. Good to see you here. And Peter McKenna is here as well. Always good to see Peter. Good morning. I'm easy to use too, he says. Oh, right. A video. Yes, I see. Need for Speed. Need for Speed. The question of the day. What movie would you like to live in? Need for Speed. I see Need for Speed. I'm not sure if I have. I'll look it up. What else have we got? What else do we have coming up? Oh, I know. We're actually going off to Italy. I'm going to take you on the first of our visits, which was an interesting one. Not equipment related, but it was interesting nonetheless. Back after this. I'll explain the video in just a moment, but here's Jim Turner back on our question of the day. What movie world would you like to live in? He says, all creatures great and small, because it was a time in farming when I was just starting to become truly mechanized. Yeah, indeed. James Herriot, all creatures great and small. Or the film Tycoon, which I don't think I've seen either. To be going to far-flung places, being involved in massive projects. Another one I need to look up. More for the bucket list of movies that I need to get through. Anyway, so spent a week in Italy, you know that. And we did visit Mantovani Beni, Trevi Beni, Caterpillar, the Caterpillar dealership, CGT, Despe, the Italian demolition contractor, loads of stuff. But we also did a couple of kind of detours. We went to the Lamborghini factory, which was the Lamborghini factory. But the first visit we made was in Milan. There's a company called LCD Group, or LCD Trading. And they basically deal in scrap metal. But the guy that runs it has also got a bit of a way with, he's got a real passion for metal and getting the most out of them. One of the things, well, basically he takes a lot of the stuff that they find on demolition and recycling sites and turns it into fine art, furnishings, stuff like that. I didn't film my favourite part because I was so interested in what it was that I forgot to film it. They basically taken, you know, the Italian mocha coffee pots that you put on the stove with a bit of coffee in and it bubbles up and you pour yourself a cup of coffee out. They've taken one of those, put it on a stand and put a light bulb in it. So you had basically a mocha pot light or a lamp. The most Italian thing I've ever seen. Imagine going into an Italian's home and flicking on the light and it's a mocha pot. Anyway, this guy has got a real passion for all things metallic. And we visited his, I'm going to call it a studio or a gallery, one of those things in Milan. And this is our journey to that. Gary Muirhead says, sounds like the Godfather music. There's a reason for that. I couldn't find any suitable music for that video, so I went on to, there's an AI website called Suno, S-U-N-O, basically allows you to create your own music from scratch. And I punched into it, I wanted something Italian sounding, Godfather-esque. That's what it gave me. So Gary, well spotted. And would I like to live in the Godfather movie? For the clothing, yes. For the potential murder, possibly not. But yeah, I'm all about the old 1930s clothing, all about that kind of thing. Anyway, people, that pretty much wraps up the main part of this morning's show. I am going to roll the outro in just a second before leaping gazelle-like over into my morning monologue. If you can't stick around for that, please stay safe, look after yourself, your family, your friends, and your colleagues. Hope to see you again very soon. But if you do have the time and the inclination, I'm going to be back in just a moment to talk about how machine cabs might go full circle, and I don't mean revolving, I mean go full circle in the evolution of equipment. Right after this. During a previous visit to Volvo Construction Equipment, their headquarters in Eskilstuna in Sweden, I visited the nearby Munktel Museum, where they have a collection of vintage construction and agricultural equipment. One machine I remember vividly was an early ADT, probably from the 1960s. I sat in it. The machine, or the seat, let me do that again. The seat was basically a plank of wood, and the steering wheel looked like something that had been salvaged from an early steamship. Worse still, the engine was relocated right behind the operator's head. If the fumes didn't get you, the noise definitely would. Mind you, at least it had a cab. Early machines were open to the elements. If it was hot, the operator baked. If it rained, the operator was wet. Even the early mini excavators that made landfall in the UK in the 1980s arrived, at best, with canopies. If the rain fell straight down, you were protected. If there was even a slight breeze, you were soaked. Since the earliest days of mechanised plant and equipment, operators have sat behind the levers of machines that were often rudimentary, offering little more than a basic platform to get the job done. But as the industry evolved, so too did the machines. As technology advanced and safety regulations became more stringent, manufacturers began to recognise the need to protect the operators, not just the machinery itself. The first major change was the introduction of enclosed cabs designed to shield workers from falling debris, extreme weather, and noise. By the mid to late 20th century, the operator's cab had transformed into a fully enclosed, air-conditioned haven with features designed for comfort as much as safety. No longer was the operator exposed to the elements. They were now shielded in a comfortable, controlled environment, reducing fatigue and stress during long work hours. Machines began to include advanced features like Bluetooth connectivity, touchscreens, and integrated communication systems, making it easier for operators to stay in touch with other team members. The seats were engineered with ergonomic considerations, adjustable, cushioned, and even equipped with suspension to reduce the impact of vibration and rough terrain. These upgrades didn't just improve comfort, they enhanced productivity and efficiency, allowing workers to focus on the task at hand rather than the discomfort of their environment. The evolution from bare-bones machines to state-of-the-art equipment was not just about machines getting more sophisticated, it was a clear response to the changing needs of workers. The industry began to prioritise operator comfort and safety, realising that a well-cared-for worker is a more productive and accurate worker. By improving the design of the cab, the controls and the comfort of the operator, manufacturers ensured that skilled labour could perform at a higher level with reduced risk of injury and burnout. But what of the future? After more than 100 years of designing machines with the operator in mind, could we be heading toward an era where the very features that have become standard, the seat, the joysticks, even the cab, might no longer be necessary? This question arises as the construction and demolition industry pivots towards autonomy. With labour shortages continuing to plague the sector and sustainability goals pushing the industry towards zero emissions, autonomous machines are emerging as a potential solution. These machines don't require human operators in the traditional sense. They can work round the clock without needing breaks, and they don't have the same risk of human error. As a result, some manufacturers are exploring the possibility of eliminating the need for human-facing features altogether. In one sense, the move towards autonomous equipment is a logical progression. It promises to address labour shortages, improve safety, and meet the industry's growing sustainability demands. However, it also raises a paradox. After spending over a century designing machines to enhance the operator's comfort and safety, could we soon be looking at machines where the human-facing features are rendered obsolete? If autonomous technology continues to progress, and machines can be controlled remotely or function without an operator inside, what will become of the ergonomic, comfort-focused designs we've come to expect? Would traditional equipment be retrofitted to accommodate accommodation? Would traditional equipment be retrofitted to accommodate automation, removing the features that were once designed to protect the operator? Alternatively, could we see an industry where these features become optional and the human operator is relegated to a supervisory or monitoring role, overseeing a fleet of autonomous machines from a central control station? Looking ahead, the future of construction and demolition machinery could look vastly different from what we know today. On a typical job site, instead of a fleet of operators working inside their heavy-duty equipment, we might see a variety of machines working autonomously, with a small number of human operators overseeing them remotely. The traditional image of the operator sitting behind the levers could soon be replaced by a control centre where workers monitor and manage the work of several machines at once. The question then becomes, how does the industry reconcile these two forces? The move toward autonomy is inevitable, driven by the need for efficiency, safety, and sustainability. Yet the human-facing design elements of machinery are deeply entrenched in the culture of construction and demolition. Will we find a balance where machines continue to offer both autonomous functionality and optional operator comfort, or will the days of human-driven machines with their seats and their joysticks eventually become a thing of the past? And might we just go full circle? Those early mini excavators that came with canopies offered... Wow, struggling today. Those early mini excavators that came with canopies offered cabs as an option. If autonomy truly takes hold, those cabs might yet become optional again. And those operators that were once an afterthought, they could become a distant memory. Apologies for the constant stumbling there. No idea what that was all about. I was stifling a sneeze at the beginning, but that went away, so I can't blame that for the entire thing. Going back to which movie would you like to live in? Tycoon is actually a love story with a construction scenario wrapped around it. Brilliant film with John Wayne as the lead. That would probably explain why I've never seen it. Not a John Wayne fan at all. I've kind of enjoyed True Grit, but preferred the Jeff Bridges version because I like Jeff Bridges. Never thought of John Wayne as much of an actor. John Wayne kind of turned up and was John Wayne. Is my opinion. Listen, I feel free to shoot me down if you wish, but never been a John Wayne fan, which might explain exactly why I've never seen Tycoon. But I will go and check it out because, it's all part of the game, isn't it? So, yes, going back to the mid to late 80s, when the first tranche of mini excavators started to make landfall in the UK from Japan, they came generally with canopies, and you could have a cab as an option, and it was an option, a paid option. Could we go back to that? You think back to some of the coverage of our trip to Balma. Lots and lots of autonomous machines starting to make their way in. And I know a couple of the Liebherr machines, which are autonomously controlled, retain the cab. And one of the reasons which kind of sticks in my head, I was told by one of the guys responsible for designing the autonomous wheel loader that Liebherr had on display and on demonstration as well. apparently the machine can recognize its surroundings. It's constantly scanning its surroundings for changes. So if a rock is dropped in the middle of its path, it will go around it. It's constantly doing that. There is one thing in particular that it struggles with. It can't identify snow. So if you're operating one of these in somewhere where it snows a lot, Switzerland, for example, up in the Alps, and you get a big downfall of snow, as far as that machine is concerned, it is now operating on a blank canvas. It has no concept of contour or anything like that. As a result, this is the point I was making. As a result of that, Liebherr have decided we'll keep the cab in place so that, if you are an owner of one of these autonomous machines and you decide, actually, this is a job that requires a person, the person can leap in, take control, and be it snow or a particularly delicate job that you think requires the human touch, they can do that. But will that be the case in the future? Even going back to the T264, the autonomous mining machine that was unveiled at Mine Expo, by Liebherr as part of their work with, what's the name of the company? Fortescue Mining down in Australia. Still has a cab. I mean, the cab was kind of sealed off, but the cab is still there as a kind of fallback position. And yet, there are machines, the Rogue X1, the Rogue X2, I think, from Bobcat, both cabless. We could be looking at a situation where not only is the operator, but the cab becomes optional. Why adapt an old machine to be autonomous? Just perfect the humanoid robot, and it can be used to do anything a person can do. So it'll be a plant operator, ground worker, mobile GPS unit, security guard. I mean, I'd love to see it, but I do think that is a long way off. But going back to your point there, why adapt an old machine to be autonomous? If you've got, for example, a mining truck that is good for, if you take good care of it and you're willing to drop a new engine into it and things like that, what is that good for? 20 years, probably, maybe even more than that. Don't know. Why not take one of those and switch in the, if you've got one that's 2, 3, 5 years old, maybe even leave the cab in place, but convert that into an autonomous machine. You've got another 15 plus years of life out of that machine. Only you've taken the operator out of the equation. I think that's a pretty good idea, actually. One robot can be multifunctional and save a lot of people's wages. Yeah, listen, it's a funny old situation. When it comes to autonomy, as somebody that loves technology, I can sit here and say I would love to see it. I'd love to see autonomous machines take hold. Love to see the level of productivity. It's a bit like that argument that people have down the pub after a few pints. It's all very well banning performance-enhancing drugs at the Olympics, but wouldn't it be great just once to see exactly what could be achieved with performance-enhancing drugs? Could a human run the 100 meters under 8 seconds, for example? I don't know. This is the same. I'd love to see just how efficient, how productive we could be. But then there's the other side of me, the human side of me, and the empathetic side of me that doesn't want anyone to lose their jobs. But I do wonder how close we are now to being able to argue that this will not actually mean job losses. It will mean job losses, but hear me out. As it stands at the moment, if anybody talks about autonomous equipment, be it on demolition and construction, but also in factories where you've got robots manipulating and manufacturing things, there's always that argument of, it's going to replace jobs, and what will people do with their time, and how will people feed themselves and clothe themselves and look after their families? There's always that argument. But with the level of skill shortage that we have in the industry now, we could soon get to the point where those on high in the industry can say, well, it's not really job losses. We're just plugging the gap where we're unable to fill jobs with humans. It's going to be a tenuous argument, but that's never stopped anyone in the past. And unless we can have a real shift, a real turnaround in the number of people that we are attracting and can attract to the industry, the argument for autonomous machines becomes harder and harder to fight against. you know, if you had another HS2, for example, and the powers that be decided that as much as possible that's going to be autonomous. But surely that will impact upon people's jobs. Well, we'd really like to employ people. You know, humans are much better than machines, but we can't find enough of them. So we're going to just go all autonomous. And like so many things, that's the thin end of the wedge. I think once somebody has done that, once somebody has pioneered that and made it work and made it effective and safe and productive and everything else, the floodgates open, basically. Jim says, I get your drift, but the boffins should be looking more for a replacement for a human. I think they are in some respects. All I would say is I do wonder about robotics, whether our vision of a robotic future has been skewed entirely by Hollywood. You know, whenever you think of the word robot, you know, you tend to think of a T-1000 from Terminator, or you know, the fast-running robots from what was that Will Smith movie? It wasn't I Am Legend. It was the other one. Was it iRobot? iRobot, possibly. But we tend to think of robots in a very humanoid form, and yet that's not necessarily the case. Oddly enough, and this is whether this is an Italian thing, I don't know. When we went to the Lamborghini factory, there's a big area of grass outside separating the factory and the headquarters from the road. And there out front was a robot, I was going to say vacuum cleaner, a robot lawnmower, going back and forth and you know, making the thing look all pristine. Well, sure enough, a couple of nights later, we went out for dinner with VTN, and we were in a very nice restaurant up in the hills, and next door was a house, big house, probably very expensive, and there out in their meadow was another of these robot lawnmowers. I think there is that temptation to think of robots as looking like people, only metal, where in actual fact they don't need to be like that at all. You think about the robots we have in factories now. You know, they are basically an arm. You know, a very, you get the idea. I'm manipulating things here. You know, they are very, very versatile, but they don't look like people. And why would they? I mean, even just trying to remember where we were. It was Mantovani Benny's factory. They've got a very, very simplistic robot, and I mean, this is not decrying their robot, but when they are making and then testing an attachment, including some of their biggest attachments, they've got effectively a robot boom that all it does is pick up the attachment, rotate it, tilt it, and just to make sure that everything's hunky-dory. They've got a robot for that. You couldn't, I mean, the alternative is to have a 100-ton excavator on standby to pick up an attachment, whiz it around a few times, and get rid of it. They don't need that, so they've got a robot for it. Robot manipulation within the Lamborghini factory. Things like the doors. The doors are picked up, suckers on a manipulator. They're aligned with where they need to be, and then along comes the guy with his spanner, and he just locks it in place. None of which are humanoid. Could humanoids flourish in construction? Don't know. It's an interesting one. The thing that struck me, and the reason I did that story in the first place, was purely that idea of going full circle. You know, where we've gone from humans were basically an afterthought. You were just there to pull the levers and press the pedals. You then became sort of an integral part, and you were well protected and well looked after, and you were made increasingly comfortable. And now we seem to have gone full circle, where potentially the human being becomes an afterthought or a distant memory. And as a result of that, we could then change the whole sphere of industrial design. And when you do that, one of the things that occurred to me was, when you think about an excavator, when you think about most machines, actually, when you think about the way that those machines are designed, they are designed basically around the cab. with the notable exception of the Dresser dozer, cabs tend to be offset. They're offset on an excavator because you've got the boom down one side. They're offset on a telescopic handler because you've got the boom down one side. On a wheel loader, they're central, but you've got the problem of visibility trying to look through the bucket or over the arms or whatever it might be. All of those things are a compromise. If you had no operator and if you therefore required no cab, what would those machines look like? Would they stay the same? Or could we completely reimagine those machines? For example, could we have a machine, an excavator, for example, where the boom is located or is mounted centrally, making the machine completely, perfectly balanced, bang in the middle, boom, counterweight an engine behind it, hydraulics below it or whatever, and just perfectly, because you've got no worries about visibility, because frankly, that's a thing of the past. You've got no worry about sound levels or anything like that. So you can put the engine precisely where it needs to be rather than where it is most convenient for the operator. And even thinking about, if you take that all out, there's been a move on industrial design, particularly within demolition and construction equipment, to move key maintenance points to ground level so that people don't have to climb on machines to check oil or top up oil or whatever it might be. If you take the human element out of that, you can now put those maintenance points, assuming we still have maintenance points, you can put them anywhere. How does a machine look if you just basically said, this machine will never require a human? Take them out, now go crazy with the design. I wonder if that's something that Gary Major over on LinkedIn would like to look at. What could you do? What could you do if you took out the human element? And just how far could you take that? How different would machines look? Interesting, right? Think about those autonomous haulers that Volvo have got. For one thing, they're relatively small. They probably only hold about, I don't know, off the top of my head, 10 tons of material. But the idea is to have a fleet of them, so they're constantly going round and round. But they're exactly the same front and back. There is no cab, so it doesn't matter whether reversing or going forward, they look exactly the same. That is a reimagining of what it means to haul material. What would that reimagining come up with if we were to say from this point forward, from where are we today? It is the 18th of June 2025. From the 18th of June 2035, there will be no humans in this environment. What will those machines look like then? Where will the engine sit? Where will the power pack sit, should I say? Because it's in all likelihood it'll be electric or hydrogen by then. Where will that sit? Where will the boom sit? Does it need to be off to one side? Where will the maintenance points be? And so on. And even little things. Imagine an excavator with no steps. A dozer with no steps. A wheel loader with no steps. No wing mirrors. No cup holder. No seat, no windows. It's weird, right? I wonder. Jim says, but a robot lawnmower is only a lawnmower. Human has evolved to be a multifunctional tool. True enough. So replicate that into a robot and it will solve more problems. It will. I wonder. I'm sure there are much, much cleverer people than me working on this. I wonder about the economies of that. Are you better developing a highly complex robot, humanoid or otherwise, that can tackle a multitude of tasks? Or are you better having individual, less complex and therefore less costly robots doing specific tasks? I mean, I've mentioned robot lawnmowers. You can get these Roombas, the robot vacuum cleaner that sort of works its way around your house and then puts itself on charge, but it drives around the dog or the cat or whatever it is that you've got in your house. Would you necessarily want that machine to then go and cook your dinner? Or would you be better off having a dedicated, and I'm sure this will all come down to economies and everything else, and first generation will probably be a bit clunky and it will get better. Maybe I won't be around to see it fully taking its shape. It does make me wonder, though. And again, going back to Jim's point, which this idea of multifunctional, if you were to take the human out of the equation, could that spawn, let me put Jim back up again, could that spawn more multifunctional machines? I know we have backhoe loaders where you dig at one end and load at the other, but could you do more if you took the human out? I wonder. If you had and I'm going to make this up as I go along, and if anybody builds this, remember I came up with it first. Imagine a dozer with a ripper on it, but also with a boom on it. So once it's ripped, it can actually clean up after itself. I don't know why you'd want that, but I'm just spitballing here. But if you took the cab off of a D10, you would potentially have room to put a boom and dipper and a bucket or whatever it might be. Could you do more with that if you didn't have to have room and space and line of sight for an operator? Interesting. It's complex because it's new. A steam engine was a complex new tech before they became commonplace. Yeah. Listen, you've only got to look at these in recent years. You know, the first iPhone, as sexy as it was, no apps, was basically a phone. You could text a bit quicker on it, maybe. The camera was half reasonable. That was about it. But with the addition of apps and with the evolution of the iPhone, it's become, and the Android phones for exactly the same reason, they've become more and more and more. I wonder. And what I find strange is when you speak to the equipment manufacturers, you know, they'll launch, for example, you know, who came up with their excavators latest, Volvo, for example. Volvo recently launched a brand new F series of excavators. In all likelihood, as those F series machines are being shipped, there's probably a little skunk works up in Eskilstuna somewhere where a group of very, very smart Swedes are now working on the G series. Probably, because you know that F series will be with us for 5-6 years, maybe a little bit longer before it's ultimately replaced. So is anybody looking even further ahead? And if anybody is, it's probably going to be somebody like Volvo. Are they looking ahead? You know, there's the G series, which will still have an operator. There's the H series, where the operator has become a bit optional. By the time we get to the I, or the J, or the K, operator? But a quick hitch boom above a rotating cab and the current D10 can be a multi-tool, even with an operator. That is true. No, that is absolutely true. But you know what I'm saying. Could you, if you took the human element out of a machine, could you add more versatility to it? If things like visibility and safety were no longer a concern, could you come up with something a little more creative? Jim, I'm sure you could, because that's how you think. So there you are. Go away and design a D10 with a boom. Excuse me. I don't know. A telehandler, an access plate. I don't know what. You're the smart one around here. I'm just a bloke that pushes buttons. Anyway, people, I'll be back tomorrow for more of the same at 10 o'clock tomorrow for, as I say, don't know what else is going to be in the show, but one thing I can tell you will be in the show is our interview, our exclusive interview with the soon-to-be-retired Gilles Ronnet from Caterpillar. Tune in for that if you possibly can. Until then, everybody, have a fine and splendid day. And Jim Turner says, these things are what my mind constantly thinks about and designs. Are you constantly surrounded by napkins and bits of paper, or is it all up? Is it all up in the noggin? Are there bits of paper laying around in Shea Turner with designs of these futuristic machines? I'd like to think there are, like Leonardo. I almost said Leonardo DiCaprio. Leonardo da Vinci. These etchings of machines of future past or something. I don't know, Jim. One day you will reveal all, I'm sure. I'll be back tomorrow. Until then, everybody, have a fine and splendid day. See you soon.
Bye.